Lena and Marcus thought they were just playing a late-night game of hide-and-seek with their friends inside the abandoned Miller estate. But when the lights went out, the laughter stopped, and something else started counting. Now, trapped in a house that shifts with every breath, they realize the game isn't about who hides best. It's about who survives long enough to be found. It started as a harmless game on a cold autumn night. My friends and I were bored, wandering around town, talking about how nothing exciting ever happened anymore. That when someone suggested playing hide-and-seek inside the old Wrenwood house, the abandoned one by the woods that everyone avoided. They said a family once lived there, but one by one they disappeared, leaving the place to rot. I didn't believe the stories, but something about that decaying house against the gray sky made me feel uneasy. Still, I agreed. We all did. It was supposed to be just fun. The moment I stepped through the doorway, the air changed. It was colder inside, thick with dust and the smell of damp wood. My shoes crunched on broken glass as I moved deeper into the living room. The wallpaper peeled off in long strips, and there were dark stains on the floor that looked too old to recognize. When the others started laughing and counting down, I ran, trying to find a good hiding spot before the lights went out. My heart was already racing, though I wasn't sure why. I passed a long hallway lined with closed doors. Most of them were swollen shut from years of neglect. At the end of the hall was a closet, half open. It was small, but deep enough to fit me. I slipped inside and pulled the door nearly closed, leaving a small crack to see through. Then I turned off my flashlight. The dark swallowed me instantly. At first, I could hear them moving through the house, calling out numbers and whispering to each other, laughing as the game began. But as the seconds passed, the sounds grew fainter until I could only hear my own breathing. The house settled around me, groaning like something alive. Then came a faint sound, a dragging noise from somewhere down the hall. It wasn't footsteps. It was slower, heavier, as if something was being pulled across the floor. My first thought was that one of my friends was trying to scare me, but then it stopped. Everything went still. I counted the beats of my heart, straining to listen. Then, 3 soft knocks on the closet door. Not loud, just slow and careful, like someone testing if I was really there. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I waited, hoping it would go away. But the knocks came again, slightly harder this time, followed by a faint scraping sound, like fingernails dragging down the wood. My hand trembled as I reached for the door handle. When I finally pushed it open, the hallway was empty. My flashlight flickered weakly as I scanned the floor. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the dust, fresh and deep. They didn't belong to me. They were bare, long and uneven, one heel dragging slightly behind the other. I followed the trail with my light until it disappeared into the dark end of the corridor. The silence pressed in, heavy and complete. Then, just before the light flickered out again, I saw something move in the shadows, a shape that wasn't supposed to be there, and it was waiting. The footprints led toward the staircase that descended into the basement. I stood frozen at the top of the steps, my flashlight trembling in my hand, the weak beam stretching only part way into the darkness below. The air that drifted up from that space was damp and cold, filled with the faint smell of metal and mildew. I didn't want to go down, but something in me needed to know what was there. Maybe I wanted to prove it was just one of my friends. Maybe I wanted to believe that the house wasn't what people said it was. Each step groaned beneath my weight, the sound echoing off the stone walls as I descended. The basement felt untouched for decades. When my light passed across the floor, I saw the marks, scratches, dozens of them, carved deep into the wooden beams as though someone had clawed their way toward the stairs. I tried to ignore them, focusing on breathing evenly. My throat was dry, my pulse hammering in my ears. At the far end of the basement, I saw what looked like old furniture and broken toys piled against the wall. dolls with cracked faces, a rocking horse missing one eye, stuffed animals covered in dust. But what caught my attention were the handprints, dark stains smeared on the concrete walls. They looked old, but there were too many. Some small, some large. And beneath them, carved into the wall, were words so faint I had to step closer to read them. "Don't play here." The moment I saw that, the light flickered. Then I heard it. A faint breathing sound, deep and slow, coming from behind the shelves near the corner. It wasn't steady, like someone was struggling to inhale. I turned the flashlight toward the noise. The beam hit the wooden shelves covered in cobwebs. I took a step closer, trying to tell myself it was just wind or maybe an animal. But the breathing stopped the moment I moved. I waited in silence, listening. Then something shifted behind the shelves, a slow scrape, like fabric against the floor. I took a step back and my heel hit something soft. I looked down. It was a shoe. One of my friend's shoes. The laces were torn. The inside was soaked in something dark that hadn't dried yet. Panic surged through me. I turned and ran up the stairs 2 at a time. The wooden boards shook beneath me as I reached the top, grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't move. The door wouldn't open. I yanked harder, but it stayed locked, as if something was holding it shut from the other side. The air behind me grew colder. I could feel it, something standing close enough that the hairs on my neck rose. Then the faintest whisper brushed past my ear. I couldn't make out words, just the feeling of breath. When I turned around, my flashlight flickered once more. The basement floor was empty, but new footprints had appeared. Bare feet, wet and dark, starting from where I stood and leading away into the shadows. I stumbled away from the basement door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. The air inside the house felt heavier now, thicker, as if it resisted my every breath. My mind screamed to get out, but no matter which way I turned, every hallway looked the same. Long stretches of peeling wallpaper, broken picture frames, and doors that led nowhere. I tried calling out my friends' names, but the house swallowed my voice. The silence afterward felt alive. When I reached the living room again, I froze. One of my friend's jackets was lying on the couch, torn straight down the back. The fabric was ripped in a way that didn't look accidental. I leaned closer, noticing dark stains across the seat cushions, a deep brown color that looked too old and too thick to be anything but blood. I wanted to believe it was a prank, but the metallic smell told me otherwise. The faint dragging noise started again somewhere upstairs. It was slower this time, deliberate, like something was pacing. The sound traveled across the ceiling directly above me, then stopped. I stared up, barely breathing. The ceiling groaned as though something heavy had crouched down right above where I stood. Then came the unmistakable sound of nails scraping the wood. I took a step backward, and the scraping followed, moving in sync with me. I bolted toward the front door and twisted the handle. It wouldn't budge. The lock turned slightly, then froze midway, as if something on the other side was holding it. I hit the door with my shoulder again and again, but it didn't move. When I stepped back to look at the handle, it turned by itself and clicked shut. A faint whisper came from behind me. Not words, just a low hiss of air, like someone exhaling too close to my neck. My flashlight began to flicker. For a split second, I saw my reflection in the dusty window beside the door. But there was something wrong with it. The reflection wasn't mimicking me. It was standing slightly behind my shoulder. Its head was tilted, its mouth stretched into a smile that didn't belong to me. I spun around, shining the light into the darkness. There was nothing there, just the empty hall. My pulse thundered in my ears. I turned back toward the window, and the reflection was gone. Only my face stared back, terrified, pale, and drenched in sweat. Then came the sound of footsteps running through the hall upstairs, fast, frantic, like someone being chased. They stopped abruptly above me, and the ceiling cracked with a sharp pop. Dust rained down. I took a step backward just as a small object fell from above, landing near my feet. It was a handprint, smeared in something dark, pressed perfectly into the layer of dust on the floorboards. But it wasn't shaped like a human hand. The fingers were too long, too thin, curling inward like claws. Before I could move, the flashlight flickered once more and went out completely. In the pitch-black silence that followed, I heard breathing again, this time right behind me. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor of a different room. I had no memory of how I got there. My flashlight lay a few feet away, the beam weak but still alive, flickering against the cracked ceiling. The air smelled like dust and mold, heavy with the faint scent of something sweet and rotten. My head throbbed, and for a moment I thought I could hear a soft humming sound, distant and childlike, drifting through the walls. I sat up slowly, every bone in my body aching. The house was silent except for that faint melody. It sounded almost playful, something like a nursery tune. But it was offbeat, wrong somehow, like it had been recorded and played backward. I pushed myself to my feet, grabbed the flashlight, and followed the sound down the hall. The walls looked different now. The wallpaper was torn away completely, revealing wood that seemed damp, almost pulsing with moisture. Every few steps, the floor groaned beneath me, echoing deep through the house. The sound led me to a small bedroom at the end of the corridor. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a room covered in dust and cobwebs. The faint light from my flashlight landed on something scattered across the floor. Small wooden toys, worn smooth with age. A tiny rocking horse, a spinning top, several dolls with carved faces frozen in wide smiles. Their eyes were painted black, too dark and too empty. The humming stopped the moment I entered. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear my heartbeat echoing inside my head. Then I noticed the bed in the corner. It was small, almost child-sized, covered in a filthy gray blanket. The shape beneath it was unmistakable, something lying still, unmoving. My first instinct was to turn around, to leave, but my legs felt like they weren't mine. Slowly, I stepped forward and reached for the blanket. I pulled it back. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. Beneath the blanket wasn't a person, it was a pile of masks, dozens of them. Each one crafted from paper, plaster, or maybe something else. They were all faces, men, women, children, all painted with expressions of joy, fear, or shock. Their hollow eyes stared upward. My stomach twisted when I realized that some of them looked familiar. I picked one up with trembling hands and turned it over. On the back, written in faded ink, was a name. It was my friend's name, the same friend who'd vanished earlier that night. My chest tightened as I dropped the mask and stumbled back. I could feel it then, a presence standing behind me. The air grew colder, and that humming returned, now louder and closer, circling the room like invisible hands brushing the walls. I turned sharply, but the room was empty. Only the toys and the bed remained. I tried to move, but my body refused. In the corner of my eye, one of the masks slowly turned toward me. Its mouth curled into a smile that hadn't been there before. I ran from the bedroom, my flashlight beam jumping wildly across the walls. The hallway stretched endlessly, twisting in directions that made no sense. I could feel the house shifting around me, the floorboards bending under my weight as though something beneath them was moving. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. Every time I thought I recognized a doorway, it led to another corridor, each one darker and colder than the last. I didn't know how long I'd been running before I finally stopped. My legs were trembling, my lungs burning. When I shined the light on the walls, I saw something that froze me in place. Names. Hundreds of them carved deep into the wood, layer upon layer, as if generations of people had been here before me. Some of the names were old and faded, almost erased by time, but others looked fresh. When I stepped closer, I saw one carved lower down, the letters shaky but familiar. It was my own name. The moment I saw it, a noise rippled through the house. a deep groan that came from everywhere at once. The walls began to shudder, dust falling from the ceiling. I turned and ran again, but the house didn't let me go. The floor stretched beneath my feet like a living thing, dragging me toward the stairs. My flashlight flickered violently, casting twisted shadows on the walls. In one flash, I saw them. Figures standing in the hall, still and silent, their faces hidden behind masks. In the next flicker, they were gone. When the light steadied, I found myself back at the front door. It was wide open, moonlight spilling across the floor. My heart leapt. I sprinted toward it, desperate to feel the cold air outside. But the moment I crossed the threshold, something was wrong. The air didn't change. The ground beneath me felt the same. I looked up and froze. I was standing in the same hallway again, the same walls, the same broken frames, the same open door just a few feet ahead. I took a step backward, but the door stayed where it was, waiting. My hand began to shake as I raised the flashlight. The beam flickered across the walls, and I saw that the carved names were gone. In their place were words burned into the wood, repeated over and over again. Hide, seek, hide, seek. Somewhere in the dark I heard counting, slow and steady. 1, 2, 3. The voice was faint, but it was moving closer, echoing through the halls. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The light flickered once more, revealing faint footprints on the floor, bare, wet, and leading straight toward me. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. The counting stopped. Silence filled the air like a held breath. Then, behind me, a whisper slid through the darkness, soft and almost playful. Found you. Before I could scream, my flashlight went out for good. And in that final instant of light, I saw my reflection in the cracked window ahead, smiling back at me with someone else's face.